I'm just going to put a straight edge here, and I'm going to measure down to the bottom of the pan. My working measurement's going to be about 8.25 to 8.5. I want to be around there for the bottom of the pickup tube. Over here we have our oil pump, and then this is where the pickup tube is going to thread in. One of our options is to repurpose the factory pickup tube right here. And what I've done is I've sliced that piece out after taking some measurements, and this piece gets removed. And then what we want to do is we want to weld this onto here. Now the good news is we've got lots of meat on that tube there, so we shouldn't have any worry about welding that together. And again with this one too, there's a lot of meat on there, so we shouldn't have any trouble welding that. The other good thing about this is this was basically widened out. You could see where that's tapered. So that was widened out to accept this piece here. Because they've done that, what we're able to do is we're able to take this piece here, and it's going to actually fit inside there. That will be how we repurpose the factory pickup tube. Another option that we can choose is I've got a 90, and these are just normal pipe fittings right here. So I got a 90 street elbow here, and that's a 3/8, and that will thread directly into our oil pump. And then we have a pipe fitting here, and then we have it'll thread into this. And what this is a reducer. All it is a reducer. It goes from 3/8 to 1 inch. And then I just kind of cleaned it up, made it look a little more pretty. You don't need to do that, but that's what I've done. So here you go in here, you can see the 1 inch pipe threads on the inside. You can see the 3/8 pipe threads right there. I've repurposed this piece of rubber off of a sway bar link, and that's going to fit inside there. This will fit inside. I cut this little piece here as a screen, and you can use any material. This is just what I've found. I in fact would like to find something a little finer than that, but this is what I have ready and available. And then that will go in there. And then we take this here, and this is just another reducer. The only thing I did was I just drilled out this center section larger. So this would have been a 3/8 by 1 inch reducer. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna thread that in there like that, and then that rubber down on the bottom, this is gonna contact that, and that's gonna be our friction, and everything's gonna be tight. And then we're gonna have our screen in there, and then it threads onto there, and then that's our simple pickup tube. And then you can easily adjust your length right here by adjusting the length of the nipple. And both of those pickup tubes are going to thread right into the side of the oil pump right here, and then these are the two bolts that bolt it down onto the block right there. The idea is the head we'll start to get the head past here, and then we'll touch that side of the piping, and we'll just run it to where it needs to be, and hopefully it'll fit in there. Now this one here, because it's so wide, it might have to be angled over a little bit, because if this is going to be where our pipe is. The diameter on this one here isn't as big, so it might be able to go straight down beside the wall here and not cause any complications. But those are our two options. Simply put those pickup tubes on, and then we'll be able to install our oil pan that's going to have our windage tray that's tacked in there. This one here is just in for fitment purposes right now, and then once we got everything ready to go, I'm going to use that other tray that we built and tack that in there. We've put that rubber bushing down in the bottom there, and then we just use this, we thread that in place, and that's going to seat that down in the bottom. And this is kind of like a bell shape in here, so what happens is when we thread that reducer in here, that's going to squish up against the rubber, which is going to squish up against in here. Now the screen is going to get sandwiched in between the two pieces. You put that in there, then you thread this on. Once you have that threaded in place, it's the rubber bushing in here that's going to allow this to tighten and keep all the friction in here to keep everything tight and secure so it doesn't come undone. Again, what you could do is change that screen to any size that you want. You can make it as large and fine as you want. Personally, I would like a little finer screen because I don't want any big chunks going into the oil pump. After modifying that factory pickup tube, we do have the oil pan sitting down. And what we had to do is we just had to wiggle it around to get it to fit in there. This is the position that it wants to be in. It's not exactly 90 degrees, but that is where we can get that oil pan slipped over top of that thing and set down. If we take the straight edge like this, it's likely that the pickup tube, the outside diameter of that is touching the side of the oil pan right there. That's why it is where it is. Here's the homemade pickup tube that we've installed here. You can see that it's more of a 90-degree angle. The pan went on way easier because of that smaller diameter, as we thought it would. And it also too had to be shifted over closer to the center because it's contacting the side of the oil pan there. The oil pan, I think, is kind of shaped where the wall kind of tapers inward a little bit. But it fits, and it fits good, and I think that we won't have any trouble installing our windage tray that's tacked into the oil pan after we've used either one of those pickup tubes. One of the most overlooked things when rebuilding an engine in general maintenance is the oil pump. Probably a good idea to take it apart and check it. It's not a big deal, but there's some tight clearances involved with this pump. On this page here, it's given us some numbers to reference, and the first thing we're going to look at is the outside diameter of our rotor. So we want to make sure and see that that's within our tolerance there. 2.469 is our minimum. Right here we're using the vernier, and we're going to measure that outside diameter, and when you take a look at it, it's going to come up as 2.71, but we're within spec on that. In this case, we're going to take the vernier and we're going to measure those two spots, and they both come out with the same number. We're at 0.826. We're looking at the outer rotor thickness, V6 and small block, 0.825 minimum. We got 0.826. Inner rotor thickness, V6 and small block, 0.825. We've got 0.826. After doing those measurements, we've dropped our rotor in there. It spins around. We don't have any trouble. There's nothing catching. Spins real nice. With the inside one installed, we're going to take the outside rotor and we're going to slide that into place as well. Everything is down tight. And now we want to take a straight edge. We're going to measure across the face here. Hopefully you can see that's my 2/1000 shim. And you want to get a really good straight edge across there, and you want to measure across all those surfaces, and you don't want that 2/1000 to be able to go in there. Oil pump cover surface variation, and that's our 2/1000 rounded up. If I had both hands on there, I could show you that it's within spec. That 2/1000 shim does not fit underneath there. We want to check our rotor tips here. So it's this rotor to this rotor where they're making contact there. I got a 5/1000. On some of them it's going through, on some of them it's not. Our rotor tip clearance on a V8 is a maximum 10/1000, so we're within spec on that. You want to rotate this, and then you're going to want to check them all. Note that there's 4 lobes on the center, but we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on this one. So you'd probably want to keep turning it around until you've checked it 5 times. The last one we want to check is our rotor to the body clearance. So that's just going to go in between here, and that's about a 7/1000 going in there. Our outer rotor to the body clearance is 14/1000 maximum. So everything's within spec. Here's our page here where it's given us the 4 measurements that we got to take. So we're going to measure the width of the body there. We're going to measure from the rotor to the outside of the housing. We're going to measure our top. This is from with our straight edge from the top there, and then we're also going to measure the tip between the 2 rotors there. Those are the 4 measurements to take when you're checking your oil pump. If it falls within spec, you're good to go. If not, you're probably going to want to replace that oil pump. Now it's time to put this back together. I've cleaned everything really well. I've tapped out my holes, and then I've cleaned them with brake cleaner and blew them dry with some compressed air. I'm going to put some blue Loctite on those bolts after everything's clean. The torque spec that I found for them bolts is going to be 96 inch-pounds. There's no gasket in the gasket kit for this oil pump, and in fact I guess some of these engines don't have a gasket for the oil pump. Once we have both surfaces cleaned really well, both on the bearing housing and on the oil pump itself, then we can install that and tighten it down. That piece in there is just going to rest inside, and then we will line these up and get our bolts and tighten that down. Oil pump is installed. That's going to be a 3/8 diameter bolt with a 9/16 head, and that should torque down to about 30 foot-pounds. All the exterior work on the oil pan is completed. We've got it painted up. So we've got our plug on the bottom that we modified. We have our 2 spots where we want to, in the future, hook up a exterior filtration system that'll take the oil out of the pan, filter it, put it back in the pan. Those also too will have that check valve incorporated with them, so when you're making those connections, oil isn't going to come out of those connections. On the side here, that is a physical oil level. We don't want the oil level any higher than here because that's where the bottom of our windage tray is going to be. So basically that's where we want that oil level to be, and that's just a manual check on that. And on the back we got a provision for a temperature sensor.